our coach.
Hey, everybody. I am running late, but I am here nonetheless. It's time for Aaron Live. It is Sunday, June 2nd, 2024. Now, I realize because I got a late start, I'm now streaming against Ethan, so I'm going to get killed in the ratings, but I am here for you in reruns. So if you're watching Ethan right now, come back later, watch the show. It'll be worth your time. I'm pretty convinced that it will be, sort of. Yeah, so we were down visiting my son and his wife and their baby, which is known as my grandson. And so we're always sort of working around their schedule because, they've got the stuff that we want to see, the baby. So we kind of, whatever they say, we go, we can do that. And so made me a little bit late, but it's going to affect my audience today, I'm sure. But as I see, there's a few of you trickling in right now, so I don't feel completely alone. Big show, a lot of movie reviews. I watched a lot of stuff this weekend, including George Miller's Furiosa, a Mad Max saga or tale or something. I'll give you my 2 cents and a few other cents worth on that one. I've also been encouraged by our good friend Graham Nolan and Shanthan Jetty to check out the series of Universal Mummy films that came after the Boris Karloff movie, The Mummy, in 1931. So I've been watching all of those, and I have some thoughts on that stuff as well. It may be the return of curmudgeonly Aaron today. But then we still have top 5, and then we've got, we're going to take a look at Franklin Booth. If we have time, we'll do pull some stuff out of the old flat files. So there's plenty of stuff. I didn't have time to do my regular video opening because I have to copy clips off of YouTube and then import them and then edit them in. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to do the show today because I didn't know till this morning what time we were actually going over to visit. And so I didn't put together the show completely last night. I left some of it open for today because like I said, I didn't know if we were even going to have time to do it. So then I thought, you know what, forget the elaborate opening. We'll just use one of the old openings, and which is what I did. And here we are. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Those of you who've pried yourself away from Ethan's stream for a few minutes, thank you for being here. And let's find out actually who is here and joining us. Citizen Ronan is here. First one in the door. He gets nothing for that, but we appreciate your participation. Creative Faye is here. Barbara Paulson joining us. Tim F is here. Marcus Killer Group, purveyor of all things pop culture knowledge. Kellraiser is joining us. Sheeple Hunter. Duck Bacon. Bacon. Ronan's here. Says this film is worse than Godfather 3. Well, we'll see what I have to say about that. Geek Avenger says, darn, you started streaming. I owe Squeaky $5. Didn't think I was going to do it, did you? Well, I did it. I felt like I owed it to you guys to make an appearance. In fact, if I was there like late, I might have waited till Ethan was done streaming and done something super late night. But I was, I prepared most of the show last night. So I had something ready to go regardless of what happened. So we actually were able to make it back, in a reasonable amount of time. So I said, I'm just going to go. And then, of course, after I set up the thing in StreamYard and was ready to go, I went and saw that Ethan was streaming. I went, oh, great. I'm going to get killed in the ratings. My Nielsen rating is going to be terrible. Let's see here. Anybody else here? Cole King joining us. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Rachel Brinkley is joining us. Rachel, thanks for joining us. Iodine 74. Greg Harper is here. Stippling Vaughn. Franklin Booth, let me get my book out so I can read along. I've got a nice Franklin Booth book too. There's a couple of books out on his artwork. Stippling, by the way, thank you. Shelley said, make sure you tell Stippling, and Mrs. Stippling, thank you for the gifts that you sent, the candles and the stuff. So thank you very much for that. Pity Ma's here. Pity Ma says, Aaron, hi, Aaron, I'm double steaming, you're double streaming, but I'm a woman, so I'm capable of this feat. Lol, she says. I'm not a woman. Pity Ma is. I just want to make sure that we're clear that I have no confusion about my gender. So I just want you guys to know that. Jimmy Owens is here. Repairman Jack is here. It's so darn rainy in Vancouver today. Yeah, well, it's rainy here too. So I was just complaining about it. I was like looking out the window going, God, I hate the rain. I hate it. But it makes everything so green. Edwin, the Ace Volume 3 is live Acevedo. Edwin, the Ace Volume 3 is live Acevedo. There you have it. That's a lot of work. Leg Kick is here because Leg Kick is almost always here. All right, here we are. We're a few strong, but that's all we need. That's all we need, just enough to get the show rolling. You guys that are the diehards, and I appreciate it. Thank you guys all for being here. But let's get this show on the road. And really, there's only one way to start. Well, actually, no, there's two ways to start. We'll start with this. Please hit the like and subscribe. If you haven't already, to help this channel grow. Here's a little public service announcement for you. Yeah. Frankenstein is angry that we're talking about the mummy and not him. But no, you guys, I do appreciate it, you being here. But if you are here, please hit the like and subscribe. It would be, I guess, of great help to me. That's not very convincing, is it? But I don't really know. I don't know how much it benefits the logarithm or the algorithm or the logarithm. Oh, geez, I haven't done logarithms since I was in high school, which is why I failed math in college. Okay, because I wasn't. I did actually really good in high school. My math grades in college, though, were something to be desired. Shelley mocks me for my lack of math knowledge. And I mock her because I can add and subtract and multiply in my head, and she has to have a calculator. So I'm good to a certain point, and then the machinery just breaks down. So Rachel says, if Aaron wished to grow his channel, he could do that by working on some cars. Well, you know what? Shelley actually suggested not on cars because I've never been all that great mechanically. My first car was a 68 Le Mans, and there was so much room underneath the hood that you could actually get in there and do stuff. I couldn't even begin to touch a modern car and have a clue, where anything was. But back in the good old days, I changed my own oil. Something wrong with the battery, you change the battery, you could change the spark plugs. The problem with the distributor cap, things like that. Everything was like, you could see it, you knew where it was at, and you could access it easily, but not anymore. But anyway, Shelley's like, we should do a cooking show. And I was like, yeah, man, that's pressure though. I don't want to screw up a meal, but we'll be talking a little bit about, in my top 5 today, we'll be talking a little bit about food. So, but yeah, so that, if you do stuff like that, car mechanics, cooking, talking politics, you're going to get a bigger audience. That's for sure. Repairman Jack says the new Mail-in Mysteries premiered. It was funny. Okay. Geek Avenger for $2. Thank you so much, SummerCon. I don't know. Is my name on the thing? I was contacted by the SummerCon people. I guess this is an announcement. They extended an invitation. And then I said, well, let me double check with Shelly, because Shelly, of course, has had shoulder surgery. I want to make sure she was cool if I took off for the weekend, and hopefully she'll be well enough that she can accompany me. But I said, I check with my wife and I'll get back. I'll back with you tomorrow. So I did. I emailed him and said, yeah, we're a go. I said, need anything else? Let me know. Didn't hear anything like, okay, great. Nothing. So then about several days went by and I realized that it was started Friday at noon. And if I'm driving up there, I can't leave Friday morning. I have to leave here like at 6 a.m. It's like, that ain't happening. So, I contacted him and said, well, I'm going to have to drive up Thursday night. And, so I wanted to make sure that was cool with them, for the hotel and everything. And I said, so let me know if that's okay. And I've heard nothing. So I don't know. I think I'm going, but I'm waiting for confirmation from them that, my demands have been met. So that's kind of a non-answer, but I have been invited and I did say, yes, I would go, but I need to make sure that they're okay with me coming up on Thursday night instead of Friday morning. So we shall see. And of course I will let you guys know as soon as I know. Hey, there's Randy Howell all the way from Canada. He's joining us. Gail A, is Gary going? I'm not Gary's keeper. I have no idea. Doubtful. I have not heard that is the case. I will be an island unto myself probably. Although Frank Cho's going to be there, and Frank and I get along. What do they say? Not charmingly, famously. We get along famously or something. I don't know. No, somebody else was going there. Oh, Mark Bagley was going to be there. I haven't seen Mark in a long time, but we're cool. And Dan Jurgens, of course, is going to be there. And Dan and I are go way back, obviously, and are quite friendly. I mean, not too friendly. I know it is Pride Month, but we're not that friendly. But we do get along. So there's some guys there that I can hang with. Leg Kick says for $2, SummerCon announced you already. Okay, well, I guess I'm going then. So there you have it. Yeah, I will be there. And Shelly might be there as well. My daughter has a lot of gigs set up throughout the summer. So if she happens to be home that weekend, then Shelly will probably come with me. And but if she's not here, then Shelly's going to have to stay here and take care of the dog and keep an eye on Grandma. Grandma's too old now she still gets around fine, but she's too old to leave in charge of the dog for 3 days. It's just, yeah. So there you have it. Marcus Kilgoose says Dan has a hot Batman series. I didn't know that, but great. I assume he's writing it. And if Dan's writing it, he knows how to write fun comics. So I'm sure if he is writing it, it's doing well. No way. All right, let's get this. Instant Defense. What does this say? Furiosa was an awesome movie. I understand a lot of reviews are bashing it. Well, we'll find out what I think shortly. But it is a very, very interesting film in a lot of different ways. All right, let's get to this. What I was going to do earlier.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Somebody has been to Trader Joe's recently. I got one of these left. They charge $1.99 for these, but I'm telling you, they're worth it. So my Rotini mozzarella and prosciutto roller wrap. I love these things. And they don't have any sugar in them. Lots of fat, but you know what they say? They say that protein and fat's okay. It's the sugar and the carbs that kill you. The problem is this meat gets stuck in between your teeth. And they have to wait till the end of the show to go floss. That's what they call first world problems, folks. All right. While we're eating our snacks, let's take a look at the Frazetta image of the day, shall we? That, ladies and gentlemen, is the most expensive. I don't know if you can say comic art. They might try and say comic art, but that is not comic art. That was an illustration for a book cover. And then, of course, became a Molly Hatchet album cover, and then became a T-shirt and a print and all this other stuff. But that is Frank Frazetta's, obviously. It's a Frazetta of the day, so it clearly must be Frank Frazetta's Dark Kingdom. That recently sold, I believe this past year, for $6 million in a heritage auction. So it surpasses the Egyptian Queen as the biggest amount ever garnered for a Frazetta painting. But I don't know that it's fair to say it's the most money ever paid for a piece of comic book art, because the Egyptian Queen, of course, as we found out last week, was the cover to Creepy magazine number, what was it, 26? This was a book cover. So it's not comic, technically it's not comic book art. But I think they're still classifying it that way because of Frazetta, but I think that would be a misnomer. So, but we do know that it is the most expensive piece of Frazetta work yet. And that just, that just means wait till the next one goes up for auction. But it's interesting to me because it's not, I don't think, one of his more famous paintings. I think the Egyptian Queen is a pretty famous painting. This one is known, obviously, because of the Molly Hatchet album cover. But it's not, I would think his Conan paintings would be more desirable. His Death Dealers would be more desirable, but maybe that's not the case. I don't know. I don't know everything. I try to know some things, but I can't know everything, folks. Okay. More people are rolling in. I'm glad to see that. Mississippi Queen is pretty famous. You talking about a song? Is there a Frazetta painting called Mississippi Queen? Because I don't know all the official titles. I've seen all of his work, like most of us have, but there are some titles to the images that I'm not aware of. So Mississippi Queen, if that's a name of a Frazetta piece, I don't know which one it is. I'm going to have to cross-reference. Gary says, hey, Gary, says, I read that Frank gave away his art, but Ellie got them back. That sounds like that's probably true. I doubt he gave away his paintings. Now, they had that big gallery. What do you call it? It was a show, but it was also a sale, and it came out with had the thick hardcover. What do you want to call it? A program guide book that went with the exhibit, and on the cover was it? I think it's called A Woman Watching the Moon. But anyway, it's a naked girl up in the jungle tree with her back to us, looking at a full moon, and that was on the cover of the book. Oh, excuse me. But so there was a ton of pieces that were in this show. A lot of them were for sale, and the most expensive one, and again, this was 1992-ish maybe, and the most expensive one in that book was my favorite piece, which is Back to the Stone Age, which is the one with the mammoth and the guy, charging the mammoth with the spear. That was going for $500,000. That was the most expensive piece in that catalog at that time. And that, I believe, is the only painting that Frazetta did that won, what's the sci-fi awards? One of those sci-fi awards for best book cover. So it was an award-winning piece. So at the time, it was probably the most famous. I'm not going to say most desirable because that's subjective. But I don't think that has ever gone up for sale. I don't think anybody bought it in an auction. And so if these other ones are getting 6 million, what would that mammoth one get? 8? I mean, gosh. Should have bought it for $500,000 when I had the chance. Oh, well. Anywho. Okay. So let's get rolling here. Like I said, I've got a ton of stuff. What order? I'm a little disorganized because of, the situation, how it rolled out. I want to talk about these mummy movies to kind of warm us up before I talk about Furiosa. So let's do a quick review of these Universal Monster mummy films and what I think of them. And so Graham Nolan can be pissed at me. Okay. First of all, the Mummy's Tomb. Now, the very first sequel was The Mummy's Hand. Okay. And as I described I think it was last week, I went over it. It starts off with this, high priest getting old, getting ready to die, and he passes off his priestship to somebody else. And that's how that started off. And then that guy becomes the protector of the tomb and the controller of the mummy. And then he inexplicably falls in love with the archaeologist's girlfriend and tries to take these tanna leaves and which give the mummy this eternal life, wants to use them on her and him so they can be together forever. And then, of course, it doesn't work out. And these arranged marriages, And so then we go to the next movie. I'm not going to rehash what happened in the first one we did last week. This is the same movie with different characters. So what happens is now this guy, this is like 20 years in the future or something, right? So our archaeologist buddy, that's the guy here in the glasses. He's now an older man, and his sidekick from the Mummy's Hand is older. And so the Egyptian priest, who we thought was shot and killed in the Mummy's Hand, now he was only wounded, so he's okay, but now he's old. And now he's passing it on, this priesthood. He's passing it on to this dude right here, this young Egyptian guy. So, but he makes him promise that he'll get revenge on the people that desecrated the tomb and that, shot him and all that kind of stuff. So he packs up Karis, the mummy, and the Egyptian queen that Karis is supposed to be protecting, her mummy. and sails to the US. And he takes a job as an undertaker, right? And then he sends out Karis to kill the people that desecrated the tomb in the previous movie. So it is kind of dark and edgy in a weird way. So he goes back and kills our lead archaeologist, and then he kills the archaeologist's sister, this old lady. It was so sad. He just gave her the old chokehold. And then his buddy comes back into town, the sidekick, and then the mummy kills him. And so he's just killing everybody right and left, right? And, well, the archaeologist from the first movie, The Mummy's Hand, he has a son now who's like a doctor, and he's engaged. So he's on the hit list as well because, well, you know, he's part of the family bloodline, so he got to get complete revenge. And, well, to make a long story short, this guy, the Egyptian priest, inexplicably falls in love with the doctor, the son's fiance, her. He sees her, like they're at a picnic, and he sees him. He's like hiding in the bushes, and he sees her, and he's like, oh. So he tries to do the same thing. He tries to make her live eternal by using the tanna leaves. And they get pitchforks and torches, and they come and they figure out where he's at, and they kidnap the girl, and this dude ends up getting killed before he can, you know, consummate this eternal marriage with this other guy's fiance. But the mummy, Lon Chaney Jr. as the mummy, makes off to some like southern mansion, like you'd see in like an old southern, you know, plantation type mansion. And he's up there, and the townsfolk all have torches and stuff. And he's up there on the balcony, and they just burn the building down. Like, does anybody live there? Did they ask the owners if they could burn their place to the ground to get the mummy? So anyway, the doctor gets his fiance, and the mummy gets burned, and, you know, c'est la vie. So this doctor, the son, the doctor, never seems to be all that shook up that his dad, his aunt, his longtime family friend all got murdered by the mummy. You know, he's pretty jolly about the whole thing. So I found it to be, what's the right word? Laughable. Again, not as bad as Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, but not as good as The Mummy's Hand, which was not as good as The Mummy. So we're getting worse here as we go. So this leads us to, I wanted to show you these photos here. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. So here's the young Egyptian dude talking to Karis, Lon Chaney Jr., saying, go kidnap that chick that I just instantly fell in love with and want to marry. And then, of course, the final battle in the plantation home, you know, they're up there on the balcony, and all the torches get thrown up there. Of course, here's the doctor, but he gets away. And so Karis, the mummy, gets torched. The interesting thing about all these sequels, they're like 60 minutes long. They're like an hour and 5 minutes, an hour and 2 minutes, an hour and 1 minute. It's like a long television show without the commercials. All right, quickly, we'll do this, and then we'll get to Furiosa. But The Mummy's Ghost then becomes our next film. And this one's a little better, even though it's the exact same plot again. So now we go back to Egypt, and the old priest who kind of gave the young priest in the previous film we just looked at, you know, his priesthood power. Well, apparently he didn't die. He's still there. So now John Carradine, a young John Carradine, he's the new priest guy. Then he goes, and they meet in the same room, and it's the same scene over again that we've now seen for the third time, where he now makes John Carradine the new priest guy. And his job is to go back to the United States, get Karis, that's the mummy, and get the princess, that died with Karis, her mummy, and bring them back and put in their tomb where they belong. That's his job. So he goes to America, and it's somewhat interesting. There's a college professor that was seen in the previous movie. He gets a hold of the tanna leaves. He starts burning the tanna leaves because he's trying to figure out this equation and how this all works. And that brings the mummy back. Okay. But there's no scene where the mummy like rises from the ashes of the burnt, southern plantation house he was burned in. It just shows him coming through the woods to the guy's house. You're like, where did he come from? And so he comes and he wants the tanna leaves potion. So he drinks it and kills the guy. So now poor old, kindly college professor dead. But now they know about the mummy because they remember him from the last movie. And they go, the mummy's back because they found the fingerprints on the guy's neck that he strangled. The interesting thing about this is there's some college students, young lovers, that are in this movie. Now, here's the lead female. She is beautiful. I mean, beautiful. And she's dating this guy who's a college student. Looks like he's 40, but he's a college student. Now, she didn't have the white streak in her hair, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. But when the professor burned the tanna leaves, she was in a trance, left her bed, walked out, and walked over to the professor's house, but got there just as the mummy was leaving, and she collapses, And then when they find her the next morning, she has this white streak in her hair. And you're like, what is this, Bride of Frankenstein? So somehow she's connected to all this, but you don't really know how. And Paul Taylor says, reference to Bride of Frankenstein, maybe? That's what I thought, but it wasn't. And I will explain it to you here, even though this really looks like Bride of Frankenstein. So anyway, the mummy's killing people left and right. And John Carradine the princess's mummy is now in the museum. So John Carradine's got to figure out a way to get Karis's help to get the mummy out of there so they can get back to the Egypt, right? So what happens is, as they're trying to, they're in the museum after hours, and John Carradine's working this spell or whatever, and the mummy leans over to touch the princess mummy, his long lost love, and she just disappears, right? The wrappings just collapse, and they say, well, John Carradine goes, her spirit has left her body and gone to somebody else. I wonder who that could be. Yes, it could be this girl, the female lead, if you will. And so he sends Karis to go, find her, right? And so he kidnaps her, the mummy does, and now she's got 2 streaks in her hair, and she does look like the Bride of Frankenstein. And so, of course, the town is in an uproar, and I'm trying to move this along pretty quickly, but they're holed up in this old sort of wood mill. And so John Carradine has the girl, right? And they have her tied to the table. And now her hair is completely white, right? So her hair continues to change. And you're still like going, what's going on here? And so the girl wakes up, and of course, what are you doing with me? Why have you captured me? And blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you're the princess, and she's, no, I'm not. And he says, yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. And you're like, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. But so apparently I'm not sure what his plan is. He's going to mummify her and take her back. But then, as fate would have it, as the town folks are trying to find her, and the police and everything are trying to find her, John Carradine, this voice starts going on in his head, and he's like, she's lovely. What if you were to marry her and make her live forever and make yourself live forever? And he's like, no, I must carry on my priesthood duties. But he's like talking to himself in his head, and he convinces himself that, oh, this chick is hot. I need to marry her. And so we're right back to the same story again. And so he's about to make her drink the Tana leaves juice, but he's talking out loud now. And Karis hears him. He's like, oh, you're making time with my princess, right? So he goes in and kills John Carradine just as the town folks show up. And so he grabs the girl, goes out the back, goes through the woods. Everybody's chasing him. He's carrying her. You know, the boyfriend's there. He wants his girlfriend back and everything. And then the mummy walks into a swamp carrying the girl. And by now, you see that her hands and her feet are aging. And then as he steps into the swamp and starts to sink into the swamp, right? So, and they can't get to him, you know, they can't get in to save the girl. They can't get there to save him. But the boyfriend is yelling, you know, after his girlfriend. He's like, no, no, you know, and they show you this shot. Spoiler. That's what she looks like, right? So the spirit of this dead princess had come into this college student girl who had, I neglected to say, was of Egyptian descent, right? But had no other connection, like family or anything like that to this, just that she was of Egyptian descent. And so apparently the spirit of this princess possesses her, and then she like ages out and becomes a mummy. And then her and the mummy, you know, go down together in the swamp and are dead. And I'm like, this girl didn't do anything, and she dies at the end. It was really kind of grim, dark, and tragic. But all in all, decent. But I would have liked to see them put a little effort into giving me a different plot line, because now we have 3 movies with the exact same plot. So I'm going to watch the 4th one, and we'll see how that one turns out. But anyway, so there's my rantings on Universal Mummy films. There's 4 of them, plus Abbott and Costello meet the Mummy. I'm probably going to skip that one, but I will watch the last Mummy one and see if they can give me a bit of a twist on the plot. Because I'm telling you, these were, I hated to see such a beautiful young lady turn into this old mummy hag and then be pulled down to the bottom of the swamp. It was, you know, it was sad. But anyway, that was just to get you guys warmed up about my opinions that matter nothing except to me. But here we go. So my son calls me up and says, let's go see Furiosa. And I go, why do I want to see this movie? Now, I'm a Mad Max fan. And he says, no, we got to check it out, see if it's any good. I'd read reviews. You know, everybody thinks it's great, with the exception of a few people. And the few people that don't think it's great don't like it at all. And so I'm like, all right. I mean, Mad Max Fury Road, I liked a lot. I thought it was really, really good. Despite the fact that I know that there was some feminist undertones to the film, or I guess maybe it was undertones as being delicate. It was overtly a feminist film, but it was well done. So I don't have any problem with that. I have a problem going to see movies that are preachy, and I didn't think Fury Road was. I just thought it was a well done movie. And plus, it had Mad Max in it, even though it was Tom Hardy. But, you know, if you're going to replace Mel Gibson, I thought Tom Hardy was good as Mad Max. So your first question you ask yourself as a filmmaker is, after you do Fury Road, which was a really good movie by most people's accounts, certainly critically, and it only did 154 million domestic at the box office. So why in your head would you think, you know what, we need to do a prequel with Furiosa and not have Mad Max in it at all? How does that a winning formula in any way, shape, or form? It isn't. And it's so obviously a disaster waiting to happen that I can't believe that anybody greenlit this film. But they did. George Miller made it. It's bombing at the box office. Okay. Just as anybody with any common sense could have predicted it would. Paul Taylor for $10 Canadian. Thank you, Paul. He says, so my request is for Aaron to watch Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy for completeness sake. All right. I will watch the last two Mummy movies, and that is one of them. And we'll see what we'll see what I think. Okay. So that's your first mistake, is making this movie was a mistake. $168 million mistake or whatever. It's something like that was the budget on it. Okay. Now, here's the thing with the movie. It's well made. It looks great. If you just are looking surface level at this movie, it looks fantastic, and it's well directed. It's creatively directed. I was fine with the acting. Some people were complaining that Chris Hemsworth was miscast as the villain. I thought he was interesting. I mean, I thought it was stupid. They gave him a fake nose because obviously he's too good looking to be a wasteland, dictator or whatever you want to call it, warlord. And so they gave him a fake nose so he wasn't quite as attractive. But, I guess they didn't want him being more good looking than the lead actress. So, I don't know, but I thought that was kind of dumb. But anyway, so there it is. So Chris Hemsworth is the leader of this tribe, whatever you want to call motorcycle gang, huge motorcycle gang, like it's like a township almost. And he's nuts. Of course, his name is Demento or Demented or something like that. And so he's nuts and he acts accordingly. There's kind of this weird thing where he's kind of humorous, but he's also really, really dark and evil. And so it was kind of an interesting combination, someone like Chris Hemsworth playing that type of a character. But aside from all of that, right? Surface level beauty, and beauty, I don't mean because it was obviously an ugly, wasteland, warriors. It's gross. It's grim, but it's beautifully filmed and well directed. Spectacular action sequences that you've come to know from George Miller in Mad Max. But you can't escape the fact this movie's 2.5 hours long, okay, which is way, way too long. It is tedious and even in parts boring, which is, I can't even imagine those words coming out of my mouth, but yet it is true. And Furiosa, which starts off when she's a girl and how she becomes an adult, right? The part where she's a little girl is so long and so dull. And I mean, there's stuff going on, but for some reason you just don't connect with her character. And I'll explain that reasoning. You don't make action adventure films for guys and then put your leading hero as a female. You don't have anyone as a guy going to this film. You have nobody to identify with. Okay. So that is why action adventure films with female leads fail at the box office almost inevitably. And how this is so hard for Hollywood to figure out is beyond me. But of course, we know they have their agenda and that's why they're doing things. But this was another really piss poor financial decision. And I got to ask myself, George Miller being 80 years old, how many more of these films does he have in him? Why, if this was your last film, why aren't you wrapping up the Mad Max saga with either Mel Gibson or Tom Hardy and doing one last Mad Max adventure to kind of wrap up the thing and put a neat little bow on it? Why are you doing this film? This film did not need to be made. It was pointless. And that's what, when you when you're watching a film where you're going, wow, it looks great, this action sequence is this, that, and the other, but you're like, it has no, you can't, I could not connect with it. My son felt the exact same way. It was like, I felt like we were just watching stuff, but we were never really involved in the film. And that is the failure of this movie. And again, it's a character that I don't really care about that much. The Furiosa character, you know, it's fine as a addition to Mad Max, partnering up with Mad Max. I was totally fine. That's okay. But to warrant a film about her life, and prequels are always a huge mistake. Let's go to Star Wars, right? We already know how Darth Vader turns out. So how interesting is it to watch Darth Vader grow up and become Darth Vader? It's not that interesting, folks. And then we already know what's going to happen, right? We know Furiosa is going to have to lose her arm at some point. We know she's not going to die. So no matter what situation she's in, it's never that perilous because we know she's not going to die. This film did not become interesting until she met this guy that was her partner. They were driving the trucks back and forth between, there was like Bullet Town, what was the other one? There was Bullet Town, Gas Town, and then wherever she was from, where they grew the vegetables and stuff, from Fury Road with the guys, the kids painted in white and all that kind of stuff. So there was a trucker that drove back and forth and made exchanges. Oh, I'm picking up bullets. Well, here's some food. We're picking up gas. Here's some food. I mean, they would do this, transport thing back and forth. The guy that was driving that truck and Furiosa, developed a relationship. It never got consummated or anything, but there was this romantic vibe going there. And that's when it started getting interesting, because now I have a male character as a male audience member that I can identify with. And so now I'm kind of into the movie and it's getting more interesting. Now something is finally at stake, right? But this is like an hour and a half into the movie. And so essentially, I'm not going to say it was like a 2.5 hour waste of time, but I'm going to say it was disappointing and pointless. And Chris Hemsworth at the end, without spoiling, has a little bit of a soliloquy there when he's confronted by Furiosa. And he says some things that kind of like, he tries to justify why their existence out in the desert and what they do. And it was a very sort of interesting take. And that was some interesting conversation that actually kind of resonated with me a little bit. But that's the end of the movie, practically at the end of the movie. So I would say it looks great. It's well directed. It's well conceived. On the surface level, it looks like a great movie. But I was looking at my watch. I was bored through most of it. Even the action sequences, like they have this big super tanker truck that they make that's really cool. It's got these gadgets on it, basically designed to keep from getting, destroyed by marauders, that it can go through anything kind of. And there's a great action sequence featuring this truck, but I was sitting there kind of just observing it as sort of a technical achievement as opposed to being pulled into the scene in the movie once again, because I knew Furiosa wasn't in trouble. Nothing's going to happen to her. We know she's going to live, right? And this was prior to her boyfriend, or this guy that she sort of connected with, the driver. We knew anything that hadn't started yet. So the first time we really get to see him. So we don't really know him. So we don't really care about him. And so it's this prolonged, like it went on forever, chase scene, and it was spectacular visually and incredibly staged. But again, there was nothing at stake. If you remember in The Road Warrior, right? When Mel Gibson is driving the tanker and all the Humongous and their gang is chasing him, right? And it was a long scene, but it was an incredible scene because everything was at stake. Our hero, is he going to make it? We don't know. How is this going to turn out? Where's, the other people from that gas town were headed in another direction. Mad Max is going this way, driving the tanker. These guys are trying to get the gas, and it's just, you're on the edge of your seat the whole time because everything is at stake. In this scene, nothing was at stake. It was just a scene to show off the car, and it was a great action sequence, but again, nothing was at stake. And there's that type of stuff going on through this movie. It's incredibly grim, as Mad Max movies are, bloody, as you would expect, but really lacking in a central hero that we could really identify with. And that's the downfall of this movie. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's failing so miserably at the box office. But I will also say that these movies have never done well. Even when Mel Gibson was in them, they did well because they were low budget films. But when they became big budget films, starting with Thunderdome did not do great. It did okay, but it did not do great. Even with Mel Gibson at the height of his career, Tina Turner was in it. It was a great action flick. It was there's some really good stuff in it. Didn't do well. Why? Well, I think maybe to a certain extent, end of the world films that are grim, no hope, and this film gives you no hope. There's nothing at the end of this that makes you go, well, I feel pretty good. There's nothing about this that would attract a large audience, but it does attract a cult following of people like you and me that are into this kind of stuff. But I can see why it's failing and has failed. If you're going to make a Mad Max movie, you got to bring the budget down with an expectation that you're going to, maybe if it's really good, you're going to hit 100, 150 million domestically. So you got to adjust your budget so that is a profit that you can live with. And they just didn't do this. They threw caution to the wind, did this huge budget thing that had no chance of succeeding. And it didn't. So there you go, folks. That's how I felt about it. How many stars do I give it? Out of 4 stars, I'd give it 2. And I hate to say that because George Miller's a terrific director. I think he's a little too woke for his own good. I think he's focusing on feminist issues and things like that. And that's fine if you're going to do that in a movie that suits that, but not in an action adventure where you expect guys to go see the movie. They're just not going to do it. And clearly that is the case because you can say whatever you want. The proof's in the pudding. And this movie's made $38 million domestically. Okay. So there you have it, folks. My feelings about Furiosa. Let's take a quick look at Chris Hemsworth and his fake nose right here. Look at that. I mean, he was an interesting character, but I thought, but I always had a really hard time getting past the fake nose. And here's the big rig. It had that extended scene where they're trying to get from one town to the next, and they're getting hit by a bunch of rogue bandits who apparently there's food in here, so they're trying to steal the food, I guess. This thing is cool. I mean, it's really cool. And it also makes you wonder, how could they have possibly put this thing together? I mean, seriously. Where are you getting the tools and to be able to forge this kind of stuff? And then one thing about this movie that I thought was kind of irritating was that the whole premise of this series is that, there's hardly any gasoline, all the resources are gone. And there is armies of people driving and flaunting and wasting gasoline, which is supposed to be like this super rare commodity. And I guess you could argue that, well, they had gas towns, so they would get their gas there and whatever. But I thought that was kind of silly, especially Chris Hemsworth's gang or group, because they didn't have one of these island cities, right? They were just rogues, and they were just trying to, they're locusts is what they were, because they went over and whatever they touched, they would destroy, kind of thing, because he was such an idiot. He was such a poor leader. He was just a crazy guy. And they were burning gasoline like crazy. And I just kept thinking, well, where are they getting their resources from, to flaunt their, gasoline that much? But anyway. And here's Furiosa, who's a very interesting looking actress. I'll give her that. And she was good, in it. Here's the dude, the kind of the Mel Gibson-esque guy that was sort of our hero in the movie. He didn't last too long, but but they forged kind of a relationship, and he was kind of a cool dude, and you're kind of getting behind him a little bit. And that was the other thing, if I may. We're really what this essentially was a movie of revenge film on one level, but in the bigger scope of thing, you had these 3 townships, right? Gastown, Bullet Town, and then where Immortive Joe was, right? Whatever they called that. And he had these, and they were led by 3 clans or whatever leaders. They were all villains. And then Chris Hemsworth's character, who is also a villain, and they're all fighting. And so you're like, I don't care. Who am I supposed to root for? These are all villains, There was just a lot of stuff that emotionally did not work in this film to draw an audience in. So it's brutal, yes, but you know me, I'm a grumpy old man. So the Citadel, thank you, Squibs. Appreciate it very much. Exactly. They made it a big issue. Gasoline was a big issue in all the other films. And this one wasn't really, although it should have been. Pablo Romero says, I always thought that in the end of Fury Road, the women will ruin the whole town the same way they ruined the green place. They start by wasting water in the last scene. Oh. Yeah, the mace thing was actually pretty cool. Because they didn't use it as much as I thought they would, but it basically spins those big balls and just wrecks stuff that's coming up behind them. And some of the Marauders had these like parasail type things. They'd shoot them up in the air and their things would come. I mean, there was just some really cool gadgetry. Although again, you'd have to sit there and go, how are they making this stuff? But it was still cool. Major Corndog says, you're looking for how they made the transport. Some folks argue Super Destroyer flames in space in Star Wars. Well, yeah, okay. Suspend your disbelief. And I did. I didn't sit there during the movie going, wow, how did they make this cool thing? But looking back on it, thinking about it now, you kind of go, well, wait a minute. But what it speaks to is just the big budget, sweeping nature of this film, and how great it could have been had he made it a Mad Max film instead of a Furiosa film. It was just, there's no reason to make this movie. And it's really weird that he would choose to do that rather than do another Mad Max film that sort of wraps everything up and everything comes full circle and you can just walk away from the franchise at that point. Because this failed so miserably at the box office that it's like, who's going to give him $150 million to do another Mad Max film? He's going to be hard pressed to do another one. Now, maybe, hopefully he does and does one with Mad Max. I mean, I think we all want to see, a Mel Gibson, old man Logan, old man Mad Max film and just kind of wrap up the franchise. I doubt he'll do that, but I'm okay with Tom Hardy, as a replacement. I thought he was good. But we shall see if this franchise lives on. Yeah, there you go. That's exactly right. It all had this kind of punk rock sort of piecemealed together, hodgepodged, it was really, and there was some of that in this film, but there was other stuff that was like that big war wagon tanker that they made. You're just like, it's super cool, but you're like, yeah, where's the Starfleet team of engineers to build that for you? Geek Avenger says the engineering is overdone. Yes. Spaceman says, having worked at Blockbuster back in the day, Mad Max and Road Warrior became hits on home video and cable. Exactly. It's like The Thing, like John Carpenter's The Thing. It's a cult film that became bigger and bigger and bigger. But The Road Warrior, that was a low budget movie, so it didn't have to do really, really well at the box office to turn a profit. Beyond Thunderdome was the first like real Hollywood budget Mad Max film. Well, you guys, it seems like you're pretty much in agreement with me. Stibbling Vaughn, how is that possible that it wasn't successful? It was successful, but it wasn't like, what am I trying? I'm trying to remember, and it's hard to quote the box office out of the back of my mind, and also it was 83 ish. When it was made, so the dollars don't line up, right? But I remember it making, like in its first run or first couple of weeks, I remember the number 32.8 million at some point, which was, you thought it would do much better than it did. Now, I don't know what it finally ended up at. But he didn't do another Mad Max movie after that, after Thunderdome, for until Furiosa, which was 30 years later. But I honestly just think it's the subject matter. It's just grim. It's grim and hopelessness. And it's like, how much attractiveness does that actually have? And it's not a horror film. People go watch a horror film that's like that because they get scared, and they'll go watch a comedy or whatever. But if you have a drama or an action adventure film like that, and you kind of want this sort of heroic escapism, and Road Warrior is a very dirty, grimy environment, and it's not necessarily a pleasant experience. It can be a really exciting and well done experience, like the Road Warrior, which is still by far, Mad Max 2 or the Road Warrior is by far the best of the franchise. But I thought Thunderdome was okay. It was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. And then I thought Furiosa was great, except for the fact that they did not Furiosa, but Fury Road was great, except that Mad Max was almost a secondary character in his own movie. But, I still thought it worked really well and was really well done. But I just don't think it's as good as Road Warrior. I don't, I think that's one of the best action, if not the best action adventure movie of all time. You could argue Raiders, of course. But none of them are feel-good movies. And to get big money, you got to have a feel-good movie with some optimism in it. And other than Titanic, which was kind of grim as well. Poor Jack. Most of those movies like that don't draw huge audience. Because you have to go back and see a movie more than once to make tons of money. Your audience has to go back 2 and 3 times, and no one's going to go 2 and 3 times to watch something that's depressing, even if it's really well made. Yeah, see, I got talked into it, but see, the money's well spent because I'm using it to do critical analysis now, so I can write it off. Road Warrior spawned a lot of Italian ripoffs, I'll bet. All righty. Okay, folks, there's my movie reviews for today. But wait, there's more. Let's take a moment, if we might, talk a little bit about food. I change gears in this show faster than Mad Max. You know what I'm saying? We're all over the place. That's why it's the best variety show on the internet, because it's probably the only variety show on the internet, for good reason. So what are my top 5 go-tos? Now, what does that mean? You're in a crunch. You forgot to put something out. So what are you going to make for dinner? Right. So I have really 5 go-tos whenever I'm in trouble. You're getting one of these 5 things. So without further delay, as we ponder life in the wasteland, let's take a look at number 5. This is a simple one. Probably not a big surprise to anybody, but let's go with the hamburger. It's as long as you have at least one condiment laying around in the refrigerator, like a tomato. Of course, no one in this house eats tomatoes except me. Well, my mom does, but my wife and my kids, no. Lettuce. Lettuce is always a good go-to. It doesn't really add anything except color, a little bit of crunch. If you get the right kind of lettuce. You don't want crappy lettuce. But, onion, some people like it, some people don't. But as long as you got cheese in the house and ground beef, and ground beef is always the go-to when I'm in trouble. Because even if it's not thawed, and I pull it right out of the freezer, I can put it in the microwave just until it starts to get soft, and then sort of break it up and mush it together and make hamburgers that are partially frozen, partially not, and cook them, and it's fine. And so that's part of the thing is coming up with something I can make quick when I have not prepared. So hamburgers would be number 5, because if you don't have buns, you're screwed. So you got to have buns laying around. So there's a few things that have to be in place before you can just kind of wing it and do this. That's why this is at number 5. Angela Curry. I just spent the last 45 minutes talking about Furiosa. You just missed it. Okay, so let's take a look at number 4. Now this is where things get really easy. You'll notice the theme here. Once again, using hamburger. If I have frozen meatballs, I'll throw them in there. Makes it a little bit nicer. If I don't, I'll just make up the ground hamburger. Even if it's frozen, you can put it in the frying pan frozen and just keep flipping it and scraping off the stuff that's done as it defrosts, and then cook it that way, which I do often. How hard is it to put some noodles in some boiling water? Making spaghetti sauce is not that hard, but a lot of times if I got Prego sitting around or something like that, I'll just, open up a jar of Prego. And then what I'll do is I usually find that the pre-made spaghetti sauces are not seasoned well enough. So I'll go in and add, some Italian seasoning, some basil, some onion powder, whatever I think it needs to juice it up a little bit. And so, and this is, this only takes as long as it takes for the noodles to boil, and voila, dinner. And it's actually a pretty good dinner. I like spaghetti. So this is, it's one of those nights when you come over and it's like, oh, they're having spaghetti. So Aaron must not have planned anything until 15 minutes ago. But there it is, spaghetti. It's always a winner. And so I use it often. How about number 3? Okay, Jimmy Reyes, I know, is in the chat. He'll appreciate this. Mexican, baby, of course. What I do is what I do is closer to Taco Bell than actual true Mexican sort of fiesta. Now I really do a good Mexican meal on my son's birthday when I'm making his birthday dinner. He's like, he always wants the same thing. Mexican fiesta, Dad. So I'll make the chicken enchiladas, cheese enchiladas. You have the refried beans, Spanish rice. And then you go with, tacos, burritos, whatever, so you have this whole thing, and it's, I don't have any real Mexican blood in me, but I know enough to get by. So when I'm in a when I'm in a bind, though, there's no enchiladas. It takes too much time. So I once again ground hamburger, get some taco seasoning, right, that you buy at the store, whatever. There's multiple brands. Add that to the meat. Add a little bit of water to make it just a little bit saucy. If I have enough time, what I'll do is I'll take either a can of pinto beans or can of, or 2 cans, I should say, and or of black beans, and then I'll cook them on the stove for about 30 minutes. And so they never really become like mashed like refried beans, but they become soft and almost like that, but still have some of that a heartier texture. So I like to do that if I have time. If not, Rosarita, open up the can, refried beans, warm them in the microwave, done. The only thing you really need to pull this off, and you actually don't even need lettuce. You got to have cheese. You got to have some cheese laying around. But if you don't have like tomatoes or onions, which if I do, I'll chop those up and you can add them. But just make sure I have lettuce, because then you can either go burrito or taco, right? You make your own. We'll have our flour tortillas, or we'll have the taco shells. And they can just throw it together pretty easy. Put a little taco sauce on there, sour cream if you got it. But you can, if you don't have it, you can still do this. And that's why it's one of my so it's in my top 3, obviously, of go-tos, because I only really need ground beef. And then even if it's frozen, I can just, fry it up and eventually it'll thaw out. And then a can of, can or two of either the canned beans or the refried beans, and you can make your own, So I don't always do Spanish rice. Again, usually it's San Francisco treat, right? It takes like 20 minutes to make that if you buy a pre-made box. But again, if it's sitting around, sure. If it isn't, I can still do it. And so I always try to make sure I have some of this stuff on hand in the pantry so that when I'm in trouble, I can whip this up real quickly. Oh, there it is. It really doesn't matter what it looks like as long as it tastes good. Amen, brother. Yo, cuz that Mexican plate looks like honey boo 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 boo. Honey boo boo's boo boo. Yeah, but it's got an authentic Mexican plate underneath there. David's wife, she can make some Mexican food from what I've seen and what I've heard. I actually have not tried it, and someday I hope to make my way over to David's house and get some authentic Mexican cuisine, courtesy of his wife, Sandra. So, pity Ma, kudos to Aaron because you actually cook. I'm going to yell at my husband now. When Shelly and I got married, I told her, you do the laundry, I'll do the cooking. And that's pretty much held true. When I was working at CrossGen and actually had to work like a full-time job, 9 to 5, so I wasn't home, she cooked for that 2.5 years. We were in Florida. But other than that, I've been the chef of the house. Evil One says, can of Spam will work in a crunch time. Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, listen, I'm not talking about when I really go to town. This is my go-tos when I'm in a bind, right? So that's what this stuff is. This is not like, I'm inviting people over for dinner and I'm going to make them this. This is what happens when I get in trouble and I need to do something quick. All right. Number 2. Forgot the thing. Here it is. Okay, that would be number 2. Chili, but not any chili, because usually I like to make my chili in a crock pot and let it cook all day. But sometimes you're in a bind, right, man? So you get out the cast iron skillet. Once again, you got the ground hamburger. Again, everything's ground hamburger because it's the easiest thing. If you got like chicken thighs or chicken breasts and they're frozen, the only way you can really thaw them out is if they're plastic wrapped or whatever. You can put them in like hot water and let them sit until they thaw out, but that takes too long. Hamburger is the easiest thing to manipulate quickly into several different dishes. So what I'll do here is, here's my secret recipe. I take the ground hamburger, so I fry that up, make sure that's all cooked. Then I add a can of black beans, a can of pinto beans, and a can of kidney beans. So you have 3 bean chili, right? Then I will put in an 8-ounce can of tomato paste and an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. Use the paste because the paste is sweet, the sauce isn't. And so I like my chili with just a little hint of sweetness to it. And so I put that in there, mix it up with, I add a little bit of water till I get it thick, so that it's not soup, but it's not, just beans and meat. And then you just get some taco seasoning that you bought at Safeway, put it in there, and it's a miracle. So I will let it cook usually for an hour or so that the beans are at least a little bit soft. So it's never as good as having it cook all day, but again, in a pinch, there you go. And there's always leftovers, which means you don't have to cook the next night. That's keeps the kids happy. Yes, I have a microwave, but I'm not putting, you don't put chicken breasts. I assume that's what you're talking about. I don't take chicken and put it in there and try and thaw it because it always partially cooks it. And it's okay if you do that with your ground meat, beef, because even if it partially cooks it, when you take it out and put it in the pan, you're going to fry it up, and it's all going to get cooked anyway. And it doesn't matter if it's overcooked a little bit, but chicken breast, if you overcook chicken breast, it's the worst thing in the world. So I try to avoid that. All right. Finally, I'm going to give you guys my number one go-to family favorite. Even do this when I have company. All right. And that is beef stroganoff. So what I do is, again, ground hamburger, usually 2 cans of cream of mushroom soup. You're cooking the noodles separately. I use egg noodles. They cook faster than regular noodles do, like rotini or something like that. They cook much faster. So those are boiling off to the side. So then I go in and I season with, and actually, I got to have sour cream. If I don't have sour cream in the house, I can't do this. But we generally have sour cream. But, and I do all of this to taste. So there's no, measurements written down. But I go sour cream, usually quite a bit. Some milk, around here it's whole milk, not a ton. So you're trying to make a sauce, but you don't want it to be too saucy, but you don't want it to be too thick because you're going to add the noodles and then that absorbs, and then you got a paste. You don't really have a sauce. So, and then I season with salt, onion powder, garlic powder, basil. If I have summer savory, which is my favorite, but I find that harder and harder to find for some reason. Summer savory in there. What else do I throw in there? I know there's one other I got to think off the top of my head now. I'll throw a little bit of chili powder in there just to give it a little zest, but not too much. And I also like rosemary, and I'll put that in there. And so, and I do that to taste. So I don't have any sort of like, a tablespoon of this, tablespoon of that. I just pour it in, and I do it by sight. And I know one thing, at least for me, every time I get a recipe off the internet or something, it's always under seasoned, always. And so I'm not afraid. I'm careful with the garlic because you can overdo it with garlic. But onion powder, you're not really going to overdo it. And these other things, you're not really going to overdo it. Cumin, you could overdo it. So you got to be careful with that. But so I will add these healthy amounts of all that stuff, mix it up, taste it, go, okay, it needs a little bit more of this. And then I just keep adding until I get it right. Then I add the noodles and mix those in. And then, of course, that cuts your seasoning in half because now the noodles are taking it away from the meat and the sauce. So I have to retaste it, juice it up some more. But then, and if I have to add more sour cream or add milk to get more of a sauciness after I add the noodles, I'll do that. But it is a fan favorite around this house. Generally, I'll make it with peas if I'm going to make a vegetable with it. Because then you got that sweet, because peas are kind of sweet. So you got that sweet and savory thing going on. So there you go. Beef stroganoff is my number one go-to when I'm in a bind for making a quick dinner. I hope you've all learned something from this experience. Well, it maybe it's savory is what it is, but there's a brand that labels it as summer savory. And I really like to use it a lot, but in the last year, I've had a really hard time finding it any place. I used to go to Safeway and it would just be there and I'd pick it up. Now I can't find it any place. And if you buy it online, usually it's one of these discount places where you're buying a tub, 10 pounds of savory, like a restaurant, wholesaler. Oh, and so I haven't bought any in a long time, and but I need to get it. I love it. I think it's a really flexible seasoning that you can use on a lot of different dishes. Well, what you're saying, I think, Paul, is fresh peas are good. Canned peas are not, but canned any vegetable is not good. So if I take fresh frozen peas and then I'll boil them or put them in water and boil them until they soften up a little bit. And, I'll add probably some butter, some onion and garlic, a little bit of salt, and they're really quite good. But I won't touch canned vegetables. Well, Pity Ma, if you find savory or summer savory, let me know where you found it at. Because, like I said, I just want like one of those little bottles you get at Safeway or whatever, and I can't find them anyplace. Well, dude, to do pizza, you have to have mozzarella cheese, right? So not only do you have to have cheese, but you have to have the right kind of cheese. Sauce, yeah, you can use pizza sauce, but what are you using for dough? Are you using tortillas? I mean, I've done that, sure. Do you have the right kind of meat? You can use lunch meat, but that's kind of like, you want some pepperoni laying around the house or some salami or some sausage or something. And I usually don't have that stuff just laying around. But if I do, I will make these. But then I end up rolling them up in tortillas. And so they're like pizza burrito things. Well, I was trying not to use items that, oh yeah, I'm going to open up a can of Campbell's Chunky Soup. Here you go. Something that I still had to make, but was easy and quick to make. That was kind of what I was going for here. Sheeple Hunter says, disliking the stream for the peas. Well, you can go green beans, but or broccoli. We do a lot of broccoli around here, and occasionally cauliflower, like a broccoli cauliflower mix. If you get one of those frozen bags that have both in there, what do they call that? A California mix or something? I don't know. But that'll work as well too. I've become someone who actually enjoys asparagus, but you got to know how to cook it. Because if you cook it wrong, it gets too limp and gross. But I found out how to grill or barbecue asparagus, and it's really quite good. You cover it with lemon juice, right? And that citrus juice helps it from drying out. And then you can and then season it, right? However you like to season it. And then you put it on the grill and you turn it so it's got grill marks in it until it softens up enough, depending on what, again, do you want your vegetables what do they call it, al dente, where they're still kind of crisp, or you want them soft. It just depends. But anyway, you cook them on the grill like that. And because you put them in this, soaked them in either orange juice or lemon juice. Orange juice is probably a little too sweet, but lemon juice is fine. It helps it maintain its moisture so it doesn't just dry out. Fish don't fry in the chicken, beans don't burn on the grill. Took a whole lot of trying just to get up that hill. There's a song in there someplace. I do throw everybody in this household. I'm lowering my voice. Everybody around here hates mushrooms and olives, except my mom. My daughter can't stand it. Shelly can't stand it. So it's like, I don't, as much as I put like spaghetti sauce, if I'm just like, you know what? I'm throwing mushrooms in and I'm throwing olives in. I don't care. If you don't like it, you can pick them out. I mean, I do that because it makes it a much heartier meal. And I love mushrooms and olives, but unfortunately, I got finicky eaters around here, man. So I'm constantly getting handcuffed, so to speak, in the meal preparation around here. So, but there you go. That's what I do when I'm in trouble. When I have time to plan, usually you'll get a better meal. And not to say those aren't good, because they all are good. They're just simple. All right, where are we at here? Oh, you know what I think it's time for? I think it's time to take a look at Franklin Booth and what he has to offer us. That was the wrong one. Let's try the right one. I'm digging that jazzy beat. Franklin Booth, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know who Franklin Booth is, slap yourself, will you? Just for me. Pen and ink master from the late 1800s, early 1900s. Let's take a look at his picture here so we know what we're talking about. Fine looking man. What do you think of those shirt collars? I kind of dig like old time suits. I mean, when do I wear a suit? But, if you take a look at people are wearing in the 20s and the 30s, even into the 40s, kind of dig that fashion. Anyway, there's our man, Franklin Booth. Now, Frank was an interesting cat. He was born in 1874 in Clarksville, Indiana. And he lived on a 40-acre farm. He began by drawing images of farm animals, buildings, rural scenes, and studied illustrations in school books and magazines. And as a young lad, he mistook wood engravings and thought they were pen and ink drawings. And that's really how he developed his style. He would look at wood engravings and try to emulate those using a pen and ink. And that's what developed this style that you guys are going to go, wow, Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein. Yeah, that's where Mr. Wrightson got it from. A little bit from Clement Cole as well, but mostly from Franklin Booth. These are just exquisite drawings. Let's see. He graduated from Union Academy, a local Quaker high school. Quaker. Good old days. Booth decided to continue working on the farm, pitching wheat and plowing corn. That would be my first choice. And during the day while drawing at night. Let's see. Where did he go to school at? Here's a quote. He says, "My greatest lessons in art were when I worked on a plow or with the hoe in a field alone. I do not like to follow the other fellow's ideas. I like to think out an original idea myself. That's why I think my farm life was so valuable to me. There, while working day after day in a field, I learned to really think. And I'll tell you something. I agree with that. Now, I never worked in a farm, but I had some pretty awful, tedious jobs that I worked. And my mind was never on the work. It was always working on my imagination and concepts and coming up with ideas. So even though you're working in that sort of mind-numbing atmosphere, you can still exercise your brain and your creativity. So I totally get where he's coming from. Look at this drawing. This is a World War I illustration. I don't know if this is for a magazine or a poster or whatever, but you got death up there in the clouds, the soldiers down below. And you can clearly see, if you go look at Wrightson's work on his Frankenstein book, this is exactly what he's doing, technique-wise. I mean, his drawing is his drawing. But technique-wise, this is what he's using here. In 1899, Booth got to illustrate a poem called A Thanksgiving Ode, which appeared in the Indianapolis News. A year later, Booth took a 3-month course at the Art Institute of Chicago, and while there, sold a country scene drawing to a major newspaper. In 1902, Booth attended the Arts Student League in New York and worked as a staff artist for a small magazine. When the magazine failed, Booth returned to Indiana to work for the Indianapolis Star, and in 1903, the Indianapolis News. As an Indianapolis News artist, Booth produced line drawings for news stories, wrote and illustrated poems, and drew advertisements. Let's see here. He illustrated for the Frank A. Munsey Company in New York for a year and then left to visit Europe in 1905. So all these great artists did. They left to go visit Europe. I've visited Europe and it hasn't helped me any. During the 3-month trip, he spent most time in Spain studying under the American painter Robert Henry. Despite having no influence on his technical ability or style, the trip to Europe served as a talking point in promoting himself to magazine editors. That's why I spent time studying in Spain. Ooh. Let's take a look at this. Oh my goodness. There it is. Look at that. It's really amazing. You got your birds, you got your cliff, you got your city in the background, and how he uses the density of his line work to create his foreground, middle, and background. His gray areas, his lighter areas, his darker areas. I mean, this city back here, how white it is compared to the shadows on the cliffs here. And if he had made this city this way, and then up here, if you look at the top here of this cliff, if all the cliffs were the same way, you'd lose that city, right? So you have to either darken up the cliffs or darken up the city. Obviously, the city is the focal point here, or at least you might argue that your foreground element, but of this people in the boats playing the horns and everything. But I really think your eye is drawn right here because it's the lightest piece on the board. So you got to go back in here and gray up these and create this shadow area. On the cliffs to separate the city. And if you look right here, this shadow is being cast by this mountain cliff thing here. So your sunlight is coming from over here someplace off panel right as you look at the piece off the panel right. So it's a well thought out composition. The black that makes the water completely black. Any place he wants you to look here, here. These are all real light areas. And then there are different variances of grays. Masterful. Let's take a look at some more. Oh, this is killer. Whenever I see stuff like this, I'm like, pirate ships, yay. Well, look at the background here. Again, how light this background is, and then how dark, by contrast, these boats are, these ships, right? And then even look at the birds. They're black until they hit that black water, then they become white. Interesting. These clouds are incredible. Awesome. Okay. This is interesting. Again, you can see a lot of sort of, rights and isms in this work in here. A lot of Booth's work had little elements of fantasy in them, which I always found was very interesting. It wasn't just, realistic, or pardon me, he wasn't just taking real life scenes and recreating them. He was always, not always, but he would frequently put fantasy elements in them like this. Look at this. I know Gary, who's in the chat, Gary Martin, has done some recreations of some of Wrightson's stuff, and just the time-consuming complexity of cross-hatching like this. And Gary does it with a brush. This is all done with a pen, but still, see how he keeps this apparition light up here at the top so it doesn't get lost in the shadows here, and this one here too. But like all these people making up sort of we assume these are like carved into the wall of what we'd assume is maybe a cathedral of some kind. But this crazy cross-hatching up here, it's just insane. What are the folks saying? Haunting. Indeed. Fantastic. Pityma says, wow. Indeed. Paul Taylor says, wow, that's detailed. Sheeple, that is sick. Make a sick black light poster. Cicerone says, if anybody is interested in more of his work, I would recommend Franklin Booth's Silent Symphony. He's got one or two books. That is one of them. I've got one of his books. I think I have the one that Flesk put out. I can't remember the name of it. Unhinged. That's it. I give up. This is insanely cool. Okay. Let's take a look. This is my favorite Booth piece of all time. This is actually on the cover of the book that I have of his work. Look at this. Look at that elephant. This is so freaking complex. Makes me sick. So he's basically creating his values simply by how heavy He's doing his line work. I think this is an illustration for a Rudyard Kipling story. I can't remember. But look at the trees. And again, this is to me is like, you take a look at Wrightson's Frankenstein, and you know, that's what I see in this stuff. Obviously, Booth was way before Wrightson, but makes you wonder how he plotted this out. But I think he probably went and drew in the figure, drew in the scene, right? And then I don't know. I wonder if he indicated in pencil his gray tones or if he just kind of winged it as he went along. Very interesting. But this elephant, my goodness, look at that. I just think that's that just wrecks my mind looking at that. Let's get back to Booth here. Booth returned to New York in 1906 and quickly built a reputation as an independent illustrator, first illustrating a poem for the magazine Scribner's. He next drew for Harper's, then McClure's, these are all magazines, Good Housekeeping, Ladies' Home Journal. Ladies' Home Journal used to be a huge magazine. And Collier's. In the Colliers, he did a portrait of Teddy Roosevelt. If you haven't seen that, you can just look it up and Google it. It's pretty cool. He did all this while establishing a primary studio in New York City. Booth also built a frame studio behind his parents' home in Indiana for month-long summer visits. Booth's style of pen and ink line drawing, initially developed at childhood, distinctively evoked the line work of old woodcut engravings. With calculated placement and spacing of pen lines, Booth's drawings encompassed ranges of tonal value and density. Even in his late career, Booth's imagination remained seemingly ingrained with the dreamlike scenery of rural Indiana, which he said captivated him with its indescribable haze, its luminous silence, its spiritual suggestiveness. Booth's picture concepts, prioritizing ideas and ideals over particulars, generally expressed his dedicated understanding and appreciation for both natural and man-made elements. Says from 1920 to 1930, he worked for companies like Montgomery Ward. I worked for companies like Montgomery Ward, Paramount Pictures, Procter & Gamble, Underwood Typewriters, General Electric, and Victor Victrola. Of course, they made record players and such. Sought after Booth for advertisement illustrations. In his advertisement drawings for Etsy Organ Company, which he regarded as his favorite illustrations, Booth drew mythological scenes such as nymphs playing flutes in a windy grove and a manor house scenes where spirits playing musical instruments swirl above the pipe organs. Makes you think about Wrightson's Fugue and Toccato in D minor. If you haven't seen that, look that up. Booth co-founded the Phoenix Art Institute in New York and taught there between 1925 and 1946. In 1948, he died from a stroke in his New York studio. Booth's ashes were scattered over his parents' graves in Indiana. Noted for his exceptional line drawing style and idealistic vision of art as truth and beauty, Booth was inducted into the Society of Illustrators Hall of Fame in 1983. Took him that long. But anyway, there you go. That's the story in a nutshell of the great pen and ink illustrator, Franklin Booth. Check out his work if you have not become familiar with it. It's quite good, as I think we've seen right here. Now let's take a look at some art that isn't quite as good. That would be mine. But since we were talking about mummies earlier, I kind of wanted to share a couple things with you. So let's do that now. Yeah, baby. Oh, okay. Let me all righty. First of all, in case you haven't been watching my painting videos in the Kit Carter Planet Doom movie poster, it's my underpainting in orange, because it's going to be an orange-blue complementary, more or less. And so my underpainting's all in orange. And now what I start to do is I will paint the figures, the background and the figures around Kit. And then when I get all these guys done, then I will paint her last. And so that's where we're headed on that. And while we're talking about Kit Carter, let me also say that I expanded from 64 pages to 66 because I just felt that I had two scenes near the end of the book that felt too compressed. You see, when you're working in the mainstream like I did for Marvel or DC, and you're writing a script, you got 22 pages. And so you do your best to take your story, whatever it is, and to make it work within those 22 pages. And you have to sometimes edit stuff, condense stuff that you wouldn't like to, because it has to fit into that format. Okay. So I was bound and determined to bring this in at 64 pages because that was the format that I was working in. But then I realized that I had a couple of scenes that were just too compressed, and they were too important to be that compressed. So I said, you know what? I'm the publisher. I'm the editor. I can do whatever I want. So I expanded those two scenes, each one by an extra page, so they breathed and felt like they had the amount of pages that they needed to get across the point. And so that's what I did. So I gave myself extra work. You guys get a couple extra pages. And so I'm a little bit off track. I would be done with the book right now, at least penciling it. But I've got 2 more to go because I'm actually redrawing another page as well. So I have 1 more story page to go. Then I have to redraw an earlier page that I wasn't happy with. But that's the beauty of being an independent publisher, where you're only answering to yourself and, of course, your constituents who are backing the book. That is you guys. But I think you'll give me a couple extra days to make it better for you and make it a little bit longer as well. And speaking of Kit Carter, the link is in the description of this video to the campaign. So if you haven't backed yet, take a look at it as we're getting really close to being finished. Hoping to have everything done and to the printer by the end of June. If the inking is, like I said, is a week behind me, not exactly sure where Kelsey's at on the coloring, but he shouldn't be too far behind. And so hopefully if all that gets done in a reasonable amount of time, I can get it lettered and put together by my designer in a week, and then off to the printers. So that's the goal at this point. We'll see if that maintains itself. But with me finishing penciling, that allows me to go full-time on this painting and get it done to the printer for the poster, and also finish up coloring the cards, that trading cards that will be going out to you guys as stretch goals. So a lot of stuff to get done here in a month, but once I'm freed up from working on the story, it allows me the freedom to then pull my hair out, what's left of it, to get the other stuff done. But anyway, there you go. That's Kit Carter update for today. Now let's take a look at this artwork. This is from Xena Bloodlines, which I wrote, penciled, and inked for our friends at Tops Comics. Let's get in here a little bit closer. I thought it was kind of apropos because it's a Egyptian story where Xena goes to visit her friend Cleopatra, and the mayhem ensues. This is a mummy story, and this was done in the 90s, so I don't want you to think I'm, riding the coattails of Graham's mummy comic this Joe Frankenstein. But maybe it's a way of side promoting Graham's project. You can check that out. It's on Indiegogo right now. It's Joe Frankenstein and the is it the Curse of Amun Top Ramen? No, Amun Ra. What was the name? I can't remember the name of the mummy. But anyway, you check it out over Joe Frankenstein 3 over on Indiegogo. But so in my story, we have a barely dressed Egyptian high priestess who controls the mummy. Now, to justify this, it's pretty hot in Egypt, so you don't want to be wearing a lot of clothes. At least that was my justification for it. And then we got, what's his face? From the Evil Dead movies. He played this rogue thief. Not Bill Campbell, but the heck. What's his name? Help me out, you guys. Somebody Campbell. Campbell Soup. Bruce Campbell. Thank you. There it is. Bruce Campbell. Yeah, as I can't remember this character's name. It's been too long. But anyway, so he's visiting her in these Egyptian tombs, as you can see the little hieroglyphics I made up back there. Then we got another scene with her. These are the only pages I kept from this issue of Xena. I didn't even keep the Xena pages. I just kept the... I don't know. I really like the lighting on this, so I kept it. This is all brush inking. But now here's the payoff. The reason I kept this whole sequence. It's kind of doing my little tribute to Karloff's mummy there. Now, as you know, Xena always had sort of the irreverent sort of humor to it. So I named the mummy, Ah, Come On. So, ah, come on. I thought it was kind of funny at the time. So anyway, so this was clearly inspired by Karloff's mummy. And you got your priestess walking in there. As the masses will soon realize, only Katabet, that's her, high priestess of Osiris, has the power to raise the ancient warlord of Egypt. Ah, come on. So, yeah. Dave Olbrich wanted me to name him Ah, Come On, Ma. But I didn't. Just kept it with Ah, Come On. So anyway, there you go. So that's all brush line work in there, as you can see. The cast shadow and stuff. So yeah. So there you are. There's my my version of Mummy News right there. And there's Kid again. And there's me again. Evil One, wrap this up, Aaron. I've seen this art. You have the Xena issues? Good man. Good man. That's it. Atilicus. That's what his name was. I was working on these Xena comics and I hadn't even watched the show. So I was like, as I was working on the scripts, I was watching the shows to kind of figure out what to do with the characters. I had the story. I was working on that. I had the stories figured out, but it was like, okay, well, how do these characters react and all that kind of stuff? Pity Ma says, I have no funds to scream claim. Okay. Ms. Stippling says Summer Savory is available on Amazon for $8 per ounce. Okay. I will go to Amazon to find my Summer Savory. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Stippling, because I have gone too long without Summer Savory. My planning on using my airbrush Not necessarily. I'm not a big airbrush fan, and I want this to feel, I'm talking about the Kit Carter movie poster. I want it to feel like an old kind of school painted movie poster. So I really want some brush texture in there. And so I don't want to get it too soft and too, airbrushy. But the one thing I'm toying with, and I don't really know, when I do the background and the background elements, if I don't feel that I've got enough separation between Kit and the background, I may spray the whole background like with a orange or something to kind of kick it all back and gray it down just a bit. That is a possibility. We shall see if I end up doing that or not. This has been brought up before. The kid on the poster looks like Marky Post. She would have made a great Kit Carter. Evil One for $5. Thank you. Just wanted to say the Kit Carter poster you're painting is teaching me things, and I really enjoy watching the process. I might start painting again. Good for you. Let me preface by saying that accomplished painters might look at my technique and go, no. But so I preface that by saying that I do things the way I do things. And I'm not saying that's the best way to do it or even the right way to do it. I'm just saying that's how I do it. And it's so interesting. I watched a video of a painter and just talking about his technique and stuff. And it just made me realize, and I've watched tons of videos from different painters over the years, and I've taken classes from different painters. As long as you understand the fundamentals of painting, which are the drawing has to be good. You have to understand values, that is light and shade, highlights, shadows, and how they work. And then have an understanding of how color works. Okay. You don't have to be you don't have to be a genius, but you have to have an understanding of how color works. And if you have those three things, if you have a really good drawing, even if your painting technique isn't great, it's still going to be a pretty good painting. On the flip side, if your drawing sucks and you have masterful painting technique, it's not going to be that great. At least to the trained eye, it won't be. And so what you try to do is, I have a really great understanding of drawing and of values. And I have a decent enough understanding of color. I haven't painted enough to be a master at laying down mediums and just go, yeah, I can do that. And you go, wow, that's amazing. How'd you do that? I have to think my way through these. I'm still at the stage where I'm thinking my way through these paintings that I'm doing. And so my technique may seem really much longer than it should be because I'm still a bit of a coward and I do things slow and build to certain things. Where if I was more bold and more sure, I could just go blip, 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 blip. It's done. It's never that easy, of course. I mean, I was talking to Joe Jesco recently, and he's like, there's never a point in the painting. And I've talked to other guys too, accomplished painters who say the same thing. It's like, there's never a point in the painting where you feel good. You're always like, this sucks. I got to throw it away. You always go through that stage with a painting. And then what you have to do is push through and continue to work through it to get it where you want it to be. And eventually you'll come out with something decent. But it's getting past that, God, this looks horrible stage. Because there's always that stage where it looks horrible because it's not done. And then you kind of lose confidence. You're like, oh, this is not going to work. But you got to fight through that and keep applying it, the paint, and before you know it, you've got something. Citizen Ronan, he does quite a few paintings, actually. I've seen quite a few of his nice paintings that he shows on Twitter. And he says the beginning and the end are the most exciting. Yeah, it's the middle that really is terrifying. That's true. That is very, very, very true. Now, that's why I did all these smaller acrylic paintings before I started this, because I wanted to get comfortable about how I was going to approach this. but everything's a new adventure, right? But I feel pretty confident that I can get the paint to do what I want it to do to get the effect I'm looking for. So there you have it. I won't let you down. You guys will love it when it's done. I guarantee it. There's a dog loose in the studio. Okay, Angry Gamer just showed up just when the show's almost over. Pablo Romero is right. The ugly stage of painting is hard to get through. It is, because it's the longest stage. And you're just like, God, that doesn't look right. So then you step back and go, okay, maybe I need a highlight here, or maybe this needs to be darker, or maybe I need a little more color here. Maybe I need to blend this edge a little bit more. You just keep working it. And eventually it becomes, Peter DeSab told me the same thing. He says he never does a painting where he doesn't feel like throwing it away halfway through. Like, this is not going to work. And you just have faith. You have faith and you keep going with it. But anyway, so let's see. What do we got left on the old docket here? I'll make sure I'm not forgetting anything. We did Frazetta. We did that. We did that. Oh. What about... Oh, yeah, this. I don't have a lot for you today because I didn't have as much time to search it out as I normally. I spend hours sometimes looking for decent cryptid and Bigfoot videos. So here we go. Angry Gamer, sorry, I was putting down baseboards, but I would have rather been here. Yeah, that's not great fun. You got to be careful, man, because you hit those things wrong and you split the baseboard. Ugh, man. I know, I feel for you. Okay. All right, let's take a look at what appears to be a skinwalker. Now, I love that. Do you ever notice in these videos now, a lot of people are using AI voices, and which I'm not sure, maybe they don't like their own voice, but they're using AI voices to narrate these things. And like, it all sounds the same. There's like 3 different AI voices that everybody always uses. So according to this, they heard screams out in the woods. So they called the sheriff. The sheriff came into town and he was searching the area. Now, this is the part I love. Well, let's go ahead and watch this. And said of a man that had been screaming for over an hour. There's a scream. Okay, wait. There he is right there. Now look at it. As the officer gets close, there he is. The pale figure can be seen sitting down, watching him. And as it stands up, he quickly gets out of there. That's right, because that's what you want your police to do, is not to investigate something, but to take off running when it looks a little sketchy. What a bunch of BS. Can you imagine? I'm a cop. I'll take care of you, ma'am. Don't worry. I'm getting the heck out of here. Good luck. You're on your own. Now, beyond that, I know they should use Leonard Nimoy's AI voice from In Search Of, says Paul Taylor. Okay, so there's our guy sitting right there. Let's make sure we have. So there's our guy right there, allegedly. Okay, so then we get the close up, right? So right there, it clearly is a figure that someone put in Photoshop. But there he is. The guy that I stole this from off his channel, he has the worst. He says things like in all of his videos, what would you have done? And this is terrifying. He barely survived. And you're like, what? So there he is walking. I find it hard. Ooh, That bird fly, is that a bat? Something flew, or is that just a big bug right there? That's more interesting than the pale guy in the background. So is that a skinwalker or is it completely fake? Or is it a guy in a suit? Or is it really a sheriff who's too chicken to do his job? I find that hard to believe. So I'm thinking, because if you're a cop and you got guns on you, which I assume you do, aren't you walking up to that thing and going, "All right, buddy, what's going on here? Why are you dressed in a white suit out in the middle of the woods screaming all day long?" I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm not running if I'm a cop. Angry Gamer says it's just naked crackheads running around in the woods again. Well, yeah, I would have run probably, but if I'm a policeman and I've been called in, that's my job. I'm not running. I'm pulling out a gun and putting a few rounds in him. Ask questions later. You know, I'm just saying. Citizen Rowan says, I call baloney. Well, I do too. I think the whole thing is fake. But now, come on, Captain Bipto. You know, why is the camera so fuzzy? Why are all the cameras always so effing fuzzy? You know the answer to that question. Okay, now how about this? Now, this woman said she saw this climbing on her roof, but apparently didn't think calling the police was a good idea. I don't know. You tell me. Now, this looks fairly real. I don't really have much of a doubt that she had somebody up on her roof or climbing around for this video. There she is. Do you believe her? She's on TikTok, so now I really don't believe her. Like her skinny boyfriend naked. Maybe he's got some stuff attached to him so he looks weirder in the shadow. But you see something like this. I'm 911 right here. I'm not, I might video it, but I'd be having Shelly or somebody go, call 911. There's somebody naked guy crawling on our roof. That's it. She told Junior to crawl on the roof to make a TikTok video. Absolutely. Pity Moss says, okay, now you're at my house, shotgun, then call for help. Angry Gamer says, very dedicated peeping Tom. It's a kid probably getting his Frisbee. Well, yeah, except his leg is really long. So it looks like a skinny adult. This whole thing could be like some sort of puppeteering thing up there as well. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to do. Everything's going to be distorted depending on especially from where the sun's at. It's going to stretch out, the shadows. You got a hand right there. Looks a little bit like it could be some sort of claw type thing, but it's just also how you lay your hand down. The thing is, I do really feel like the dude's naked, and I'm like, I don't know that I want to be crawling around on my girlfriend's roof for a video if I'm naked. I mean, look, you can see his dangler right there. I mean, come on, man. I don't want to see that. That's no good. So, but other than that, I might have done it like if I had a pair of shorts or something on, maybe. I don't know that I would have done it naked, though. Angela Curry says, oh, okay, reboot. Nephilim, half angel, Paul Taylor says. Well, my question is, again, you're doing a video like this. If that's real, let's just say hypothetically it was real. What happens? Where's the rest of the video with the thing crawling off the roof? Or, you know what I mean? They always do this. They give you these 3-second shots. And you're saying, well, why would you stop videoing there? Why don't you show me more? The reason they don't show you more is because there's nothing to see here, folks. It's fake. That's why. But still, if you can talk your boyfriend into crawling around on the top of your roof where your neighbors might be able to see, buck naked, so you could do this video, that's an A for effort. Green laser. That's exactly my point. So he didn't come off the roof. He just laid there and she stopped videoing. Exactly. It makes no sense. It's the dangler. We've created a new cryptid, the dangler. Oh my gosh. Okay. What's this one? Okay. This isn't a cryptid, but this is another monstrous dinosaur type creature. This is what we call real life, folks. Look at the size of this freaking thing. And that, you can tell by the snout, that is a crocodile. I don't know where this dude is at, but that is a crocodile, and that is a big crocodile. I would estimate at least 100 feet long, give or take 90 feet. No, that's got to be, considering this guy, let's say this guy's, he's probably not 6 foot, but let's just say he is for easy measurements. He's got the tail. The tail goes into the water here and here. That's got to be at least 15 feet long. And I want to know where he's at that he's getting. These look like Americans, right? Where would they be going to get crocodile action like this? Pity Moss says it's a 20-footer, 25, 3 tons of him. Oh, I think Spaceman says 12 to 15. I think 12 is being I think he's bigger than that. That would be my guess, but it's hard. Again, it's hard to say because of the perspective. But from tail to tip of the nose, I bet he's in that 15-foot range. That is a big crocodile. Where are they getting this picture at? Where would you go? I mean, it could be in Australia, right? You can't really see. Can we see much of the vegetation back there? It looks kind of swampy. I mean, it looks like, like it would be in Florida, but there's no crocs in Florida. There'd be alligators, and this is definitely a crocodile. And look at this stuff back here, this foliage. It's very swampy. It's probably Australia. It's a non-smoking area. We can see that right here. That doesn't really tell us much, does it? Marcus Killiger is saying 13 to 15 feet. Florida, they wouldn't have crocs in Florida. There's no crocodiles in the United States. There alligators are. Now, maybe you would encounter saltwater crocodiles out like in the Gulf of Mexico, maybe. It doesn't seem like I've ever heard of that, though, that's where that you'd find them there. but possibly in the southern tip of Florida, would you have crocodiles coming in from the ocean? Lake Placid. Yeah, it says saltwater crocodile down here on the video. Paul's right, but you can tell just by looking at by the snout. Alligator snouts are rounded, where saltwater crocs are pointed. See how? I mean, it's small round, but it's a narrow cone shaped, more to a small round pointed tip, where alligators are just really broad, flat rounded, nose. It doesn't taper like that. And alligators don't. I think the biggest alligator they ever caught was 13 feet. So they say maybe they can get up to 15 tops. Where saltwater crocs allegedly can get up to be 25 feet. Although I don't know that they've ever caught one that's 25. I think most they've caught is 23 or 22 feet. But that's caught. That doesn't mean there's not bigger ones out there. But generally speaking, alligator with a nose job. Oh, wait a minute here. Iodine 74 says, at a park like Gatorland in Orlando, but I'm not sure if they've got a lake that big. Maybe another park like that, though, where they'd actually have crocodiles in the park setting. Interesting. Well, this is obviously an observation platform, right, for this purpose. So it'd have to be some sort of park or controlled area. So that's possible, sure. Iodine 74 says the St. Augustine Alligator Farm has a croc, I believe, but don't think they have a lake that big either. The American crocodile has a thinner snout. Yeah, but this is a saltwater crocodile. And it says it is on the video, Field and Stream video. And it looks like a croc to me. And it's too big to be an alligator. You want to see what an alligator looks like? I'll show you what an alligator looks like. Let's revisit this horrifying. Oops. I hit the wrong button. There's me again. All right, this horrifying. This is an alligator. And you can tell, look at the difference. Look at the snout on him. How broad it is. That is an alligator. Oh my gosh, that just freaks me out every time I watch it. And this freaks me out too with this guy right there. So anyway, yes, that is the gator. All right, folks, that is really about all I've got for you today. We started late and we're finishing late. We competed with Ethan Van Scriver. I think we did okay. So if you haven't yet, please hit the like and subscribe button and help this channel grow so I can continue to bring you strange and unique content like this every week. Also, if you haven't backed Kit Carter yet, please take a moment to check out the campaign. You'll find the link in the description of this video. I think you'll find something there that'll of interest to you. And that's all we got for you this time on Aaron Live. So make sure you check out Graybeard Studio, 2 o'clock on Wednesday. That's Pacific time. We don't know if Sasquatch will be returning this week. Hopefully he will be. If not, I will have a surprise guest artist to fill in for him. But either way, check out Graybeards and keep the faith. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we'll see you right here next time on Aaron Live. Good night, everybody. And thank you. Oh, thank you for the super chats and all the comments. Appreciate it, guys. Couldn't do it without you. Good night.